Good morning. We're going to be reading a couple of chapters from Black Beauty today. So if you would follow along with me in your book, if you have one, if not on the computer screen. Last time we read, we heard about Dolly and a real gentleman. There was a man who did a great job of really being respectful to Jerry and Dolly. It's not everybody who rides in the back of a cab who actually treats the people and the horses with great respect. He also stood up for some horses that were being really abused by their owner, sadly. So we want more people like him, more people like Jerry, definitely, and also more people like Jerry's family members, because all of the people in his family are very loving and do the right thing for other people. So let's continue hearing a little more about Jerry's life. And this chapter is going to really tie into a chapter from from last week, where we heard about how difficult it is. Oh, actually, I'm getting my days off. This was, I think, Monday's reading for you all. We knew that Jerry believed strongly in taking a day off every single week. He had a 6 days license. He does not want to work 7 days because he wants to spend time with his family. He wants a day of rest for himself and his horse. So we're going to see what it looks like if someone does not take that day of rest. Everybody needs some time off. Everybody needs rest. And that's really the argument Jerry's making. So we're going to see what it looks like when that doesn't happen in today's chapter. So let me present it for you to follow. Now, I should say that for a cab horse, I was very well off indeed. My driver was my owner, and it was his interest to treat me well and not overwork me. Even had he not been so good a man as he was, but there were a great many horses which belonged to the large cab owners, who let them out to their drivers for so much money a day. We saw that in the last section when Black Beauty was owned by someone who every single time he had a new driver, they would treat him worse, right, than if he was actually owned by the driver. As the horses did not belong to these men, the only thing they thought of was how to get their money out of them. First to pay the master, and then to provide for their own living. And a dreadful time some of these horses had of it. Of course, I understood but little, but it was often talked over on the stand, and the governor, who was a kind-hearted man and fond of horses, would sometimes speak up if one came in very much jaded or ill-used. One day, a shabby, miserable-looking driver, who went by the name of Seedy Sam. So Sam is his name. Seedy means he is not... He looks like he is kind of a criminal or a burglar, taking our spelling word into part of it. Brought in his horse looking dreadfully beat, and the governor said, "You and your horse look more fit for the police station than for this rank." So he looks kind of beat up, and so does the horse. It looks like he's been really way too hard on this horse. The man flung his tattered rug over the horse, turned full round upon the governor, and said in a voice that sounded almost desperate, "If the police have any business with the matter, it ought to be with the masters who charge us so much, or with the fares that are fixed so low." So he is having a hard time with not getting enough pay from people. If a man has to pay 18 shillings a day for the use of a cab and 2 horses, as many of us have to do in the season, and must make that up before we earn a penny for ourselves, I say 'tis more than hard work. 9 shillings a day to get out of each horse before you begin to get your own living. You know that's true, and if the horses don't work, we must starve, and I and my children have known what that is before now. I've 6 of them, and only one earns anything. I am on the stand 14 or 16 hours a day, and I haven't had a Sunday these 10 or 12 weeks. So he is exhausted. And even with working this hard, he's still not making hardly enough money to live off of. You know, Skinner never gives a day if he can help it. And if I don't work hard, tell me who does. I want a warm coat and a mackintosh, which is a raincoat. But with so many to feed, how can a man even get it? I had to pledge my clock a week ago to pay Skinner, and I shall never see it again. Some of the other drivers stood round nodding their heads and saying he was right. The man went on, "You that have your own horses and cabs or drive for good masters have a chance of getting on and a chance of doing right. I haven't. We can't charge more than 6 pence a mile after the first, within the 4-mile radius. This very morning I had to go a clear 6 miles and it only took 3 shillings. He's working a long time to get barely any money. I could not get a return fare. So he's going all this way to take someone somewhere, and then he's having to drive back and get no money for that drive back. And had to come all the way back. There's 12 miles for the horse and only 3 shillings for me. After that, I had a 3-mile fare, and there were bags and boxes enough to have brought in a good many 2 pences if they had been put outside. But you know how people do. All that could be piled up inside on the front seat were put in, and 3 heavy boxes went on the top. That was 6 pence, and the fare 1 and 6 pence. Then I got a return for a shilling. Now that makes 18 miles for the horse and only 6 shillings for me. There's 3 shillings still for that horse to earn and 9 shillings for the afternoon horse before I touch even a penny. Of course, it is not always so bad as that. He's just taking a long time to say. He has a lot of hours that he's working and barely making anything off of it. And that's because this is a very competitive environment, kind of going along with our ecosystems discussion. In a community that has a lot of competition, same animals that are fighting for the same food, then the weaker ones die out and people have to fight to be able to get the resources that they need. And that's what it's like for this man. He has to drop his prices low enough so that he's able to get somebody to take his cab rather than somebody else's cab. But when he lowers the price, then he's not actually able to really make a good living off of that. Of course, he says it is not always so bad as that, but you know it often is, and I say 'tis a mockery to tell a man that he must not overwork his horse, for when a beast is downright tired, there's nothing but the whip that will keep his legs a-going. You can't help yourself. You must put your wife and children before the horse. The masters must look to that. We can't. I don't ill-use my horse for the sake of it. None of you can say I do. There's wrong lays somewhere, never a day's rest, never a quiet hour with the wife and children. I often feel like an old man, though I'm only 45. You know how quick some of the gentry are to suspect us of cheating and overcharging? Why, they stand with their purses in their hands, counting it over to a penny and looking at us as if we were pickpockets. I wish some of them had got to sit on my box 16 hours a day and get a living out of it, and 18 shillings besides, and that in all weathers. They would not be so uncommon particular never to give us a 6 pence over or to cram all the luggage inside. Of course, some of them tip us pretty handsome now and then, or else we could not live. But you can't depend upon that. The men who stood round much approved of this speech, and one of them said, "It is desperate hard, and if a man sometimes does what is wrong, it is no wonder. And if he gets a dram too much, who's to blow him up?" Jerry had taken no part in this conversation, but I never saw his face look so sad before. The governor had stood with both his hands in his pockets. Now he took his handkerchief out of his hat and wiped his forehead. "You've beaten me, Sam," he said, "for it's all true, and I won't cast it up to you any more about the police." It was the look in that horse's eye that came over me. It is hard lines for man, and it is hard lines for beast. And who's to mend it, I don't know. But anyway, you might tell the poor beast that you were sorry to take it out on him in that way. Referring to the horse. Sometimes a kind word is all we can give 'em, poor brutes, and 'tis wonderful what they do understand. So life is difficult for this man, Sam. However, it would be the right thing for him to do, according to Governor, to remember the older man who has been the longest at this stand. He says, "Just go over to your beast," referring to the horse. That's what he was calling him. Go over to that horse, pet him, and say, "I'm really sorry to take it out on you. It's really just a hard day for me. It's not the horse's fault." Should pet him and say a good word. A few mornings after this talk, a new man came on the stand with Sam's cab. "Hello," said one. "What's up with Seedy Sam?" "He's ill in bed," said the man. "He was taken last night in the yard and could scarcely crawl home." His wife sent a boy this morning to say his father was in a high fever and could not get out, so I'm here instead." The next morning, the same man came again. "How is Sam?" inquired the governor. "He's gone," said the man. "What gone? You don't mean to say he's dead?" "Just snuffed out," said the other. "He died at 4 o'clock this morning. All yesterday he was raving about Skinner and having no Sundays. I never had a Sunday's rest." Those were his last words. No one spoke for a while, and then the governor said, "I'll tell you what, mates, this is a warning for us." This is a very good point. It is a warning for everybody else that they really shouldn't. I'm going to stop presenting for now. They need to try their hardest to do well at their job and provide for their family. But at a certain point, that actually made him so sick because he was so exhausted that he became physically sick because he was not taking time off. And he was getting so worked up and anxious and angry. So that's the exact opposite of what Jerry says that he needs to do. Jerry says, I could be making a little bit more money working those 7 days, but it's more important to take a day's rest. So, sad story about Sam, CD Sam. But that shows us that Jerry and the governor, they have some really good advice. And so we're going to be seeing actually a character come back in this next chapter. It's a very short chapter. We're just going to continue on with it now. So we have a character coming back who you might be able to see the name in the title of this chapter. So the title of this chapter is Poor Ginger. So poor Ginger, we're going to see Ginger return in our story in this chapter. Now, one day while our cab and many others were waiting outside one of the parks where music was playing, a shabby old cab drove up beside ours. The horse was a worn-out old chestnut with an ill-kept coat and bones that showed plainly through it. The knees knuckled over and the forelegs were very unsteady. I'd been eating some hay and the wind rolled a little lock of it that way, and the poor creature put out her long, thin neck and picked it up and then turned and looked about for more. There was a hopeless look in the dull eye that I could not help noticing. And then, as I was thinking where I had seen that horse before, she looked full at me and said, "Black Beauty, is that you?" It was Ginger. But how she changed. Black Beauty didn't even recognize her. The beautifully arched and glossy neck was now straight and lank and fallen in. The clean straight legs and delicate fetlocks were swelled. The joints were grown out of shape with hard work. The face that was once so full of spirit and life was now full of suffering. And I could tell by the heaving of her sides and her frequent cough how bad her breath was. Our drivers were standing together a little way off, so I sidled up to her a step or two, that we might have a little quiet talk. It was a sad tale that she had to tell. Remember, the last time we saw her, both she and Black Beauty were leaving Earl's Hall. Now, after a 12 months run off at Earl's Hall, she was considered to be fit for work again and was sold to a gentleman. For a little while, she got on very well, but after a longer gallop than usual, the old strain returned, and after being rested and doctored, she was again sold. In this way, she changed hands several times, but always getting lower down. And so at last, said she, I was bought by a man who keeps a number of cabs and horses and lets them out. You look well off, and I am glad of it, but I could not tell you what my life has been. When they found out my weakness, they said I was not worth what they gave for me, and that I must go into one of the low cabs and just be used up. That's very sad. Basically, it means that instead of having good jobs, she was going to be put to the hardest jobs of all to just use up the rest of her life. That is what they are doing, whipping and working with never one thought of what I suffer. They paid for me and must get it out of me, they say. The man who hires me now pays a deal of money to the owner every day, and so he has to get it out of me too. And so it's all the week round and round with never a Sunday rest. Just like Sam. I said, you used to stand up for yourself if you were ill-used. Ah, she said, I did once, but it's no use. Men are strongest, and if they are cruel and have no feeling, there is nothing that we can do but just to bear it. Bear it on and on to the end. I wish the end was come. I wish I was dead. Poor Ginger is so miserable every day and in such pain, she thinks it would be better if I died. I have seen dead horses, and I am sure they do not suffer pain. I wish I may drop down dead at my work and not be sent off to the knackers. I was very much troubled, and I put my nose up to hers, but I could say nothing to comfort her. I think she was pleased to see me, for she said, you were the only friend I ever had. Just then her driver came up, and with a tug at her mouth, backed her out of the line and drove off, leaving me very sad indeed. A short time after this, a cart with a dead horse in it passed our cab stand. The head hung out of the cart tail, the lifeless tongue was slowly dropping with blood, and the sunken eyes. But I can't speak of them, the sight was too dreadful. It was a chestnut horse with a long, thin neck. I saw a white streak down the forehead. I believe it was Ginger, and I hoped it was, for then her troubles would be over. Oh, if men were more merciful, they would shoot us before we came to such misery. Oh, very sad. Poor Ginger has continued to have so many owners who were just really hard on her. And she had all this spirit in life. She wanted to have good work. So it probably sounds harsh that Black Beauty really wanted her to be dead, but that's because it was going to be better for her to not be in that sorrow and misery. Just like we talked about with some of you maybe have had animals like dogs that have been put to sleep because they were in such pain so that they wouldn't continue to go on living in such pain. So he thinks it would be better for people to shoot these horses that really can't go on and do more work rather than having them have these heavy loads behind them. They are broken down, hurting, and still working long, long hours and being whipped if they don't get fast enough. So it's a very difficult life for those horses. So that is the end of chapter 40. Tomorrow you are going to take a quiz on the last couple weeks worth of chapters. You have not been taking notes. I have been posting notes as optional work in Bright Thinker. If you want to review the characters in the story, then I would recommend just looking at the notes on Bright Thinker. I'll present my screen over to Bright Thinker just so you can see where that is. So if you go to, for literature, in the week of 11/9 to 11/13, there's Black Beauty notes for the week and Black Beauty notes for the previous week. Those are the 2 weeks that would be good to review the notes if you want to look at the characters from there. Okay, that is all for today. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.